She didn't expect to feel anything. It was just another job. One she took for the money, not for him. But on a quiet evening, in a kitchen filled with the scent of cardamom and steam rising from boiling rice, she felt the warmth of his hand brush hers. Not by accident. It lingered. And when she looked up, his gaze was already there, unreadable but heavy with intent. She told herself not to lean in, but her breath betrayed her. So did her silence. The kiss that followed was slow, almost reverent, like he was discovering something sacred. But kisses fade. What came after didn't. She was hired to cook, but the kitchen became her prison. If real emotional stories pull at your chest, subscribe now and tell me in the comments, what's the most suspicious job offer you've ever seen? He told her she was different, not like the others. He said it while standing, behind her, close enough that she could feel the weight of his breath against her neck. She didn't move, couldn't. His voice was low, soft, like a promise she didn't ask for. You have purpose, he whispered. You're not temporary. Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, wanted to feel seen, not used. For once. So when his fingers traced the curve of her back, and his lips found her shoulder, she let it happen. She let herself be wanted, held. It wasn't just heat between them, it was hunger. But later, when she lay in silk sheets she hadn't chosen, she wondered if she was still herself, or something he'd made. The stove clicked off. Silence filled the kitchen. Amira stood barefoot on the cold tile, her arms resting on the counter, eyes fixed on the small digital clock glowing red, 3:17 a.m. She hadn't slept in 3 days. Not really. Maybe she dozed off here and there, but it was hard to rest when you didn't know if your electricity would still be on in the morning. The fridge hummed softly behind her, louder than usual, probably from the stress of staying on during overdue billing. A paper on the table had coffee stains on one corner. The kind of paper that came with big red letters, final notice. In the next room, her daughter Nayla was curled up under a blanket with cartoon bears on it. Her legs had grown so long lately that the blanket no longer reached her toes. Amira would need to buy her new shoes soon. But how? She walked to the couch and pulled the blanket gently over Nayla's ankles. The girl stirred but didn't wake. Amira's chest tightened, not from sadness but from the ache of loving someone so completely and feeling powerless to protect them. Cooking had always been her skill, her escape, the one thing that felt certain. But lately even that couldn't pay the rent. Clients canceled, people cut back. Nobody wanted catered meals when they were barely covering their own expenses. The next morning, she sat at her scratched-up kitchen table, scrolling through job boards on her phone. Most listings were scams, or they paid pennies. One said, private chef needed, discretion required, high compensation, long-term contract, no name, no company, no address, just a phone number and a date for the interview. She almost skipped it, almost. But then she saw Nayla's little school shoes by the front door. The rubber soles had peeled halfway off. So she texted the number, Amira, available to interview. Within seconds it pinged back. Confirmed, 1 p.m., downtown, Tower 87, private elevator. Tell security, chef interview. She stared at it. No directions, no greeting, no questions. It felt wrong. But desperation doesn't ask for permission. It just shows up and demands you say yes. Amira didn't sign the contract immediately. She took it home, placed it on the kitchen table beside a bowl of overripe bananas and a chipped mug with a cracked handle. She didn't open it again that night. But she also didn't sleep. By morning she had folded it into her purse and sent Nayla off to school with the last of the bread, toasted and thinly spread with peanut butter. Later that day, she returned to the building. No hesitation this time, no questions. She signed the contract in the same spot where he'd handed it to her. Starting immediately, Dorian said, pouring himself a glass of water. My staff will show you the kitchen. There was no introduction to anyone, no welcoming speech, just polished floors, hushed hallways, and doors that opened on their own. The kitchen was enormous, 5 ovens, custom tile, cabinets so high she'd need a ladder. Everything gleamed, but it was silent. No hum of conversation, no laughter. A woman appeared beside her with a headset and clipboard. She never introduced herself. She just said, groceries are restocked daily. Use the app to request specialty items. The chef's quarters are down the hall, room B3. Then she walked away. Amira stood there alone, her reflection in the brushed steel of the double-door refrigerator staring back at her. So this was it. She opened the spice drawer. Neatly labeled jars stared back. Cardamom, cumin, nutmeg, bay leaves, no soul. By evening she made a broth that smelled like comfort. Smoked peppers, crushed garlic, a hint of ginger. She wasn't following a recipe, she was following memory. Back home, she used to stir pots like this while her grandmother told stories. Now her fingers moved automatically, chasing that same sense of grounding in a place that didn't feel like hers. The aroma drifted into the hallway. She didn't expect anyone to care. But someone noticed. She turned toward the entrance and found Dorian Vale standing in the doorway, tie loosened, jacket off, sleeves rolled halfway up his forearms. "I thought dinner was delivered around here," he said. She swallowed. "I wasn't told who I was cooking for tonight. You're cooking for me." He stepped farther into the room, his gaze moving over the counter, the bubbling pot, the stack of plantains she had yet to slice. "It smells like someone lives here," he added. Amira nodded slowly. "Food should feel lived in. Otherwise, it's just fuel." He walked to the island and took a seat on one of the stools, not the grand table that stretched across the room like a runway. She noticed how quietly he moved, like he didn't want to interrupt, only observe. "You learned this from your mother?" he asked. "My grandmother," she corrected. "Back in Ghana. I grew up in her kitchen. Does your daughter like this kind of food?" Her eyes flicked up. "Nayla eats what I eat. She's not picky." He tilted his head. "How old?" 7. He didn't write anything down, didn't type a note into a phone. He just kept looking at her, like he already knew every answer before asking. "I'd like to meet her," he said casually. "You shouldn't be apart." Amira paused at the stove. Her ladle hovered over the pot. "That's not necessary," she said. But he smiled faintly. "It's already arranged." She didn't respond, not right away. Instead, she lowered the heat and quietly began to plate the food. Her hands moved with calm, but inside her chest, something flickered, a question she didn't know how to name. She handed him the bowl. He took it, held it beneath his face, and inhaled slowly. Then, without a word, he began to eat, and she stood there watching, the richest man she'd ever seen, eating a dish she learned to make in a clay pot over a wood fire. The first one arrived on a Friday. She stepped out of a sleek black car wearing a white dress that clung to her like it had been sewn on that morning. Oversized sunglasses, diamond studs, no luggage. Amira was chopping cilantro when she heard the front doors close. She caught a glimpse of the woman walking across the marble foyer, her heels clicking softly like a clock counting down. They didn't speak. They never did. By the following week there had been 3 more, all of them beautiful, all of them quiet, all of them gone before Amira could even memorize their names. She began to notice patterns. They arrived late in the afternoon. They stayed in one of the guest rooms on the east wing. They ate little, spoke less, one left in tears. The staff never said anything, not even in whispers. When Amira asked a woman with the headset if the guest rooms were always in use, she just blinked once and said, "Sometimes." Dorian never explained either. He simply appeared when he wanted to. Always poised, always in control. Once during breakfast service, he sat at the counter as she prepared an omelet. Without looking up from his phone, he asked, "What do you think of people who mistake desire for permanence?" Amira paused. "I think they end up hurt." He finally looked at her. Exactly. That morning he barely touched his food. Another woman left that afternoon. Amira wasn't naive. She understood what she was seeing, what kind of rotation this was. But what unsettled her was how none of them stayed long enough to ask questions. Or maybe they asked, and were given answers they didn't want. Still, Dorian started showing up more often when Amira cooked. Sometimes with his sleeves rolled, sometimes in silence, sometimes with odd questions. "What's the first thing your daughter asks for when she's sick? What does comfort food mean to you? What's your favorite mistake?" Each time she gave him just enough, never more, because while he seemed to want more than food, she couldn't tell what that more really was. One morning, Amira walked into the kitchen to find a grocery box sitting on the counter. Not from the usual supplier, no receipt, no note. Just a deep wooden crate filled with ingredients from home. Yams, agouti, fresh tilapia, smoked shrimp, bitter leaves. She froze for a moment. Only a handful of markets in the city even carried these things. None of them delivered here. Dorian walked in moments later, tie half done. "I noticed you were low on some of your staples," he said. "I had a vendor bring these in." She looked at him carefully. "How did you know exactly what I use?" He shrugged. "I asked, but she hadn't told anyone." Still, she said thank you. She cooked with what he brought. The food came out richer that day. He said nothing while he ate, just nodded once slowly like her silence pleased him. Later that week, Amira received a text message from a number she didn't recognize. Your daughter will be dropped off at 10 a.m. Saturday. She will stay until Sunday evening. Her heart stuttered. She immediately called the number. No answer. She called again. Voicemail. By the time she rushed to Dorian's floor, he was already at the piano in the lounge, hands resting idly on the keys. You can't arrange my daughter's schedule, she said, breath tight. He didn't look up. You said she loved peanut stew. I thought it would be better for her to enjoy it here, made by you. That doesn't explain who gave permission. I did, he said simply, and your mother agreed. Her lips parted, but no sound came. He stood and walked over to her, not close, but close enough to lower his voice. Your time is valuable. So is hers. I don't like seeing either of you apart longer than necessary. The way he said it, like it was something he owned. Like time was something he could move around with the flick of a hand. That Saturday, Nayla arrived in a black SUV. The driver opened the door and helped her out gently, like she was royalty. She wore the same school shoes with appealing soles. Her face lit up when she saw Amira. Amira crouched and hugged her tight, tighter than she needed to. Because somehow, for the first time since arriving here, she didn't feel like the one holding all the control. For once, the house felt alive. Nayla's laughter echoed down the marble hallways, bouncing off surfaces that had never heard joy that wasn't paid for. She ran from one end of the atrium to the other, her braids flying behind her. She danced to music from Amira's phone, sang off-key, and pointed at the ceiling lights like they were stars. The staff smiled softly when she passed. Some even knelt to greet her. The same people who barely acknowledged Amira on most days were now offering juice, cookies, warm towels for her daughter's hands. Amira didn't trust it. Not fully. Still, she let Nayla play. She cooked her favorite stew, slow and thick, with sweet plantains on the side. They ate together in the smaller breakfast nook. No silverware, just fingers, like home. Dorian didn't join them, not once, but Amira felt him, the quiet surveillance of someone used to watching without being seen. She'd caught a glimpse of him on the mezzanine level once, standing behind the railing, arms crossed, saying nothing, his expression unreadable. That night, once Nayla was asleep in the guest suite, the smallest one, closest to Amira's room. She stepped onto the balcony alone. The sky above was clear. The city sparkled, but it felt far away. Dorian found her there. He didn't announce himself, just appeared. His voice came quietly from behind. She's bright, he said, sharp eyes, like yours. Amira didn't turn. She's still a child. She deserves to be one. He stepped beside her. Not too close. Just enough to speak softer. I envy that, he said, having something so pure to protect. She finally looked at him. You don't strike me as someone who lacks anything. He gave a brief exhale. You'd be surprised. She searched his face, waiting for something. A smirk, a confession, anything human. But it was like trying to read a sealed book. Still, part of her wanted to believe there was truth somewhere in him, not just power. That night, when she kissed Nayla's forehead and watched her sleep, she whispered a prayer she hadn't said in years. Not for money, not for escape, but for clarity, because everything was beginning to feel like too much and not enough, all at once. The day after Nayla left, Dorian asked Amira to meet him on the rooftop. She'd never been up there before. The glass elevator opened to a space wrapped in quiet lights, minimalist furniture, and the hum of a city too busy to notice the people above it. He stood near the edge, hands in his pockets, looking down like he was measuring everything he owned. She approached slowly, arms crossed to guard against the wind, and whatever this moment might bring. She didn't want to leave, he said without turning. I know, Amira answered. Neither did I. He looked over, studying her. You belong here more than anyone ever has. She blinked. I'm your chef. You're more than that. She felt the air shift. I've had everyone, he said, his tone flat, almost bored. But they always wanted things. Visibility, status, their names attached to mine. He turned fully now. His eyes didn't waver. You haven't asked me for a single thing since you got here. I didn't come here to take, she said. That's why I want to give you everything. The silence between them deepened. Then he added, Don't make me explain it. Just feel it. She felt something, but it wasn't ease. He moved closer, not aggressive, not forceful, but intentional. You said food should feel lived in, he whispered. So should a life. Stay, live here. Let me take care of both of you. Her voice caught. This This isn't a life. It's a role I didn't audition for." He paused, not hurt, but unreadable. "You think this place makes people disappear," he said softly. "It doesn't. It reveals who they are." She stepped back. "Then what does it say about you?" He didn't answer, but the look in his eyes said everything. A mixture of possession and admiration, like someone staring at something they already believed belonged to them. "Did you feel that shift in the air? If something about Dorian, his words made you uncomfortable, or if you've ever had someone cross a line while pretending it was care, share your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it. And if you're locked in like I am, hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss what's coming next." The next time he asked her to meet him, it wasn't in the kitchen or rooftop. It was the gallery room. She hadn't even realized it existed. One of the doors near the east wing had always been locked. That day it was open. She found him standing in front of a single painting. No spotlight, no frame, just brushstrokes, harsh and wild, red, black, a little white. It didn't fit the clean, curated style of the rest of the mansion. "That was mine," he said without turning. "Not bought, not commissioned. I painted it." Amira didn't reply. "I made it when I lost my brother," he added. "Years ago. Car crash. He was driving home from one of my events." She looked at the piece again. There was pain in it, not the polished, staged kind. Real grief. Dorian finally turned to face her. "You asked me once what comfort food meant to me. I didn't answer." "You avoided it," she said softly. He nodded. "It's not a taste. It's a moment. A time when everything felt like it still made sense. The problem is, for me, that moment's gone." He stepped closer. "But when I eat your food, I don't feel alone." She froze. Her fingers tensed slightly. He noticed. "You don't have to say anything," he added. "I just needed you to hear it from me. Not from staff, not from gestures. From me." They stood in silence for a while. Not awkward, but suspended. She finally said, "I understand what it means to grieve in private. I've been doing it for years." For what? For the life I thought I'd have. That struck something in him. He didn't ask for details. He just looked at her like he understood. And for the first time since she arrived, Amira felt the urge to stay. Not out of survival, but from something she didn't know how to name yet. He stepped forward, just once. His hand reached out, slowly, and tucked a loose strand of her hair behind her ear. She didn't stop him. It wasn't about ownership. Not in that moment. It was something softer. His fingertips brushed her cheek. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, he was closer, and neither of them pulled away. He kissed her like he'd been holding his breath, not rough, not hungry, but slow, like he wasn't trying to claim her, only understand her. His lips moved with caution, not control. One hand rested lightly against her waist, not pulling her in, but inviting her closer. Amira didn't move at first. She let it happen, let herself feel it. Her hand found his chest, not to stop him, but to remind herself that this was real, that she could end it if she wanted to. But she didn't want to. When they finally broke apart, neither of them spoke. The silence between them said more than words could. He took her hand, didn't rush, just held it gently, fingertips grazing the back of her knuckles. Then he led her out of the gallery room. They didn't speak as they walked. Inside the main lounge, the fireplace had already been lit. She didn't ask who did it. Some things in this house just happened, as if his wants were anticipated before he named them. The lights were dim. The flames cast soft movement across the walls. He loosened his collar. She slipped off her shoes, and then they were close again, this time with no space between them. Their bodies met with care. No rush, no noise, no questions. Just closeness. His hands explored her slowly, mapping her like she was a place he wanted to memorize. She let him unbutton her blouse, one clasp at a time. She felt his breath at her collarbone. He asked her nothing, demanded nothing. Her hands moved too, not because she felt expected to, but because she wanted to. To touch someone who hadn't touched her like this in years, to feel warmth without fear. They sank to the thick rug in front of the fire. She laid her head against his chest. He kissed her shoulder, then her jaw, then her wrist. Each kiss said, "I see you," and for the first time in a long time, Amira didn't feel like she was surviving. She felt like she was being held. They stayed like that until the fire settled low, wrapped in silence, wrapped in each other. And when he finally whispered, "I don't want anyone else," she almost believed him. Amira woke up alone. The fire had gone cold, A blanket she didn't remember pulling over herself now rested across her waist. Her clothes were neatly folded on the armchair beside the hearth. The room was quiet, not in an empty way, but in a thoughtful one. She sat up slowly, touching her wrist where his lips had lingered the night before. It had been tender, real, in its own way. She hadn't been rushed, she hadn't been coerced. But now, in the soft light of morning, she found herself wondering why it had happened. Why now? Why her? She walked to her own quarters, showered, dressed simply, and made her way to the kitchen. There, waiting on the counter, was a note. Handwritten. Rest today. Nayla will be arriving this evening. I've arranged for the guest room to be redecorated. She deserves her own space. The penmanship was sharp, intentional, like him. She folded the note and placed it in her apron pocket, unsure whether to smile or worry. Nayla was coming. That should have made her heart lift. But something about not being asked, again, tightened her throat. Still, she spent the afternoon cooking her daughter's favorites. Sweet stew with roasted plantains, small meat pies with crisp edges, mango slices chilled just the way Nayla liked them. When the black SUV arrived, Amira stepped outside to greet it. Nayla tumbled out, wearing a new dress, a new backpack, shoes that fit. "Mommy, look!" she shouted, spinning in the driveway. Amira smiled, but it didn't quite reach her chest. Inside, the guest room near Amira's suite had been transformed. Walls painted soft yellow, new bed, dolls on the shelves, books on the nightstand, everything thoughtful, everything perfect. Too perfect. Later that night, after Nayla had gone to bed, Amira sat in the kitchen alone, staring at the flicker of the gas stove under a pot of rice. Dorian entered quietly. He didn't speak, just leaned against the doorway, arms folded. When she finally looked up, he said, "She lights up this house." "She's 7, Amira replied. "She lights up any room she's allowed to feel safe in." He nodded. "And she is. As are you." But the word aloud echoed in her mind. That night, Dorian asked her to join him by the piano. She sat at the edge of the long bench, hands folded in her lap. He played softly, notes that didn't follow a song, but followed his mood. "I don't sleep much," he said. "Even before you got here." She didn't respond. He kept playing. "The nights are loud in here, too many memories moving around." Amira tilted her head. "You don't strike me as a man who lets things linger." "I don't," he said. "Except people I can't stop thinking about." He stopped playing. The silence stretched too long. Then he turned to her. "You changed everything," he said. "I don't think you even know how much." She looked at him. "What is it you want from me, Dorian?" He smiled faintly. "Not what? Who?" He reached for her hand again, just like the night by the fire, but this time it felt heavier, not warmer. "I'm not one of those men who asks for permission to love," he said. "When I know what I feel, I commit to it fully." Her breath tightened. "And what if I'm still figuring out what I feel?" "I'll wait," he replied quickly. "But not forever." There it was. The softness remained in his voice, but now it came with weight. A weight that felt like expectation. She pulled her hand gently from his. "Love shouldn't feel like a countdown," she whispered. Dorian's jaw tensed, just slightly. "I just don't want to be one of your passing chapters." "You're not," she said. "But maybe I'm not ready for you to be the whole book." He looked at her, long and hard, then stood. "I don't want you to go backward. I want to move forward," she said. "Just at my pace, not yours." He nodded once, understood, but she could feel it, that the air between them had changed. The warmth wasn't gone, but now it had edges. Would you fall for someone like Dorian? Be honest. Tell me in the comments, and if this scene hit you deep, subscribe for more stories that stir your soul. It started with her phone. One morning, Amira woke up and her screen wouldn't load messages. It buzzed once, then nothing. She checked her settings. Everything seemed fine. Wi-Fi worked, apps opened, but her calls dropped before they could connect. Texts went undelivered. She brought it to the security desk downstairs. The guard offered a polite smile, took the phone, then returned minutes later. Everything should be fine now, but it wasn't. Calls to her mother still didn't go through. Even Nayla's school sent emails instead of texts. She asked for a replacement, maybe a reset, something that would give her back control. A woman from operations, she never gave her name, told her, "Mr. Vale has already arranged for your device to be upgraded. You'll receive it shortly." The next day, a new phone arrived in a black velvet box. Sleek, expensive, logged into everything already. Her wallpaper was gone. Her old photos weren't transferred. Everything felt new and unfamiliar. She tried logging into her personal email, but it asked for authorization through a number she didn't recognize. The mansion had always been quiet, but now it felt even quieter, like the silence wasn't just around her, it was inside her routines. She went to the grocery app to request a few items she always kept on hand: dried hibiscus, chin-chin flour, her preferred brand of seasoning cubes. But the app gave an error. Hours later, those items arrived anyway. Everything she wanted, without needing to ask. That was supposed to be a kindness. It felt like a warning. When she stepped outside for fresh air, someone always happened to be nearby. "Would you like the car today? Mr. Vale is in a meeting. Do you need anything from the kitchen?" The questions weren't aggressive, but they never stopped. She once tried to walk to the nearby cafe just outside the building, one she'd passed several times before. Before she could reach the end of the driveway, a driver rolled down his window. "Miss Amira," he called out, "Mr. Vale has your lunch waiting upstairs." She hadn't told anyone where she was going. She hadn't told anyone she was hungry. She smiled politely and turned back, but her stomach wasn't the thing that felt empty. It was her ability to choose. It started with an invitation, or rather a list. She found it lying open on the marble island in the kitchen, left casually like it had been forgotten. Printed in gold lettering was the heading Evening Guest List, Vale Foundation Private Dinner. Rows of names followed. Big names, fashion moguls, political donors, the type of people who were more brand than human. Near the bottom, one line stood out, not because it was bold, not because it was highlighted, but because it didn't belong. Miss Amira Vale. She stared at it for a long time, as if blinking might correct what she saw. Vale. She turned the page, searching for a footnote, some kind of clarification. But there was nothing, just names and table numbers. She hadn't agreed to attend anything, hadn't even been told about it. She definitely hadn't changed her name. When she brought it up later that evening, Dorian was in the study, seated behind a dark wood desk. He didn't look surprised when she placed the list in front of him. "I saw this in the kitchen," she said. He glanced down. "Yes, you're on the list, with your last name." He folded his hands, calm as ever. "It reads better for the press. Besides, it's a private dinner, intimate. Everyone will assume we're together anyway. I never said we were." He looked at her, not unkindly, but with something colder than affection. "You spent the night with me. You let me meet your daughter. I thought we had moved past formality." Her heart thudded once, then settled into a low, steady tension. "You assume things I didn't confirm," she said. "That's not the same as closeness." His expression didn't change. "Amira, I've done nothing but give you space, comfort, security, and now you're upset about a detail in a name that only reinforces the truth?" She stepped back. "What truth? That we're building something here?" She shook her head. "No, you're building something. I've just been walking carefully through it." He stood, slowly, hands still calm at his sides. "I've protected you. I've welcomed your child. You've replaced my phone. You've scheduled my life. You've renamed me on documents I never saw." Now his voice dipped, not louder, just lower. "I gave you everything," he said, "and you're acting like a stranger." She met his eyes. "Maybe that's because I was never yours to define." That night, Amira didn't pack a bag. She didn't cry, didn't slam a door, didn't storm out of the study. She simply returned to her quarters, sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor. A vase of fresh roses had been placed on her nightstand earlier. She hadn't requested them. The petals were soft, full, red, perfect. She plucked one and held it between her fingers until it fell apart. For the first time since arriving, she left her bedroom door unlocked. Let him wonder what that meant. Sleep didn't come, but she rested, just enough to survive the next day. By morning, the mansion was running as usual. The staff moved quietly. Orders were followed. Breakfast was made. Amira didn't go to the kitchen. She didn't answer her phone. The new one. She left it in the drawer. Instead, she walked the length of the east hallway, slowly. She ran her fingers along the walls, trying to remember when she'd stopped thinking of this place as temporary. In the gallery room, the painting Dorian had once shown her was gone. She stood in the center of the empty wall, staring at the space where it had hung. Later that afternoon, she visited Nayla's room. Her daughter wasn't there. She was still with her grandmother for the week, but everything else remained: the bed, the little bookshelf, the stuffed giraffe Dorian had ordered from somewhere overseas. She sat on the floor beside the bed and stared at the wall. When she finally stood, she walked to the window and looked out at the skyline. She had spent the last few weeks wrapped in silence, dressed up as peace. It had felt safe, but it wasn't. It had felt warm, but only on the surface. Control doesn't always shout. Sometimes it offers you slippers and a meal and a soft place to fall, just so you forget how to walk away. But she hadn't forgotten. Not yet. That evening, Dorian didn't come to dinner. The table was set for two, as always. Her plate was full. She didn't touch it. She took the cloth napkin, folded it neatly, and placed it beside the silverware. She wasn't angry. She was done. She wrote the letter at midnight, not with her phone, not with a laptop, with a pen, on paper. Her handwriting was steady. No smudges, no crossed-out words. She didn't write to explain herself. She wrote to leave a record, something he couldn't twist, something simple and final. It read, "You once said I had purpose, but I never needed you to give it to me. I am not a role in your story. I am not a possession to protect. I am a mother, a creator, a woman with a life that does not belong in a cage. Thank you for the shelter, but I need freedom more. Amira." She folded it, sealed it in an envelope, and left it on the grand piano. Then she moved quietly. She took one bag, not the designer ones that had arrived in boxes weeks earlier, but the fabric tote she had brought from home. Inside, she packed her own clothes. Nothing bought for her, just what still smelled like her. She didn't take the jewelry, didn't take the gowns, didn't even take the phone. When she stepped outside, the air hit her like a reset. The gate guard stood when he saw her. "Do you need the car, miss?" "No," she said gently. "I've called my own." A small taxi pulled up. Not the black SUV she had grown used to, just a regular car with a polite driver who opened the trunk and helped with her bag. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Back in her mother's apartment, she exhaled for the first time in weeks. The floors creaked, the window stuck halfway open. But it was hers. It was real. Nayla woke up an hour later and ran straight into her arms. "Are we staying here now?" Amira held her tighter than words could allow. "Yes, baby. We're staying." That night, she made peanut stew, with soft plantains and nothing measured. Freedom didn't always look like safety, but it always felt like truth. Ever felt like someone was trying to own you, not love you? Comment "I felt this" if you know that feeling, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next in stories that speak to your heart. 2 days after Amira left, a black SUV pulled up outside her mother's apartment. She saw it from the window as she was drying dishes. No words, just the quiet grip of her towel twisting in her hands. A man stepped out, not Dorian, one of his drivers. The one who never made eye contact. He didn't knock, just waited, holding a white envelope. Amira didn't go downstairs. Her mother did, and when she returned, her face was calm. "It's a check," she said, handing it over. Unsigned, inside the envelope was a letter, all typed. Words like reconsider, regret, offer. It was long, polished, cold. Amira didn't read the whole thing. She folded it, slid it back into the envelope, and placed it in a drawer. Not to save, just to delay the impulse to shred it. Later that evening, her phone buzzed. Not the mansion's phone, her real one. The old number, the one Dorian never touched. This time it was him, no name, just the number. She stared at the screen for 3 rings before turning the phone over. Another ring, another buzz, then silence. She never called back. The apartment kitchen was small, but it smelled like childhood. Spices, onions, oil warming on the stove. Her mother helped with Nayla while Amira cooked. Not to feed the house, but to build something. She'd posted flyers, shared menus online. Started slow. Baby showers, birthdays, a few local church gatherings. People tasted her food and smiled with their eyes first. They came back, told others. Soon she didn't just cook. She delivered, catered, took orders for the week ahead. She named her little kitchen business Nayla's Table. Not Amira's kitchen, not Veil Dining, nothing fancy. Just hers, just right. Every time she delivered a meal, she felt lighter. One client, a young teacher, told her, "This tastes like a memory I didn't know I had." That night, Amira cried, quietly, into the sleeves of her worn hoodie. But it wasn't sadness. It was the sound of herself returning. One morning, she walked Nayla to school and noticed they were both wearing the same sneakers. Nothing expensive, just practical, comfortable, free of anyone else's label. When they waved goodbye, Nayla ran off laughing, shouting something about art class. Amira stood there smiling like it was a sunrise. One Sunday afternoon, they cooked together. Nayla stood on a step stool, peeling plantains with both hands like it was a game. "Too soft?" she asked. Amira smiled. Perfect. The stew simmered gently. The apartment smelled like home, not borrowed elegance, not silence dressed in Polish. After dinner, they sat on the floor, legs crossed, passing a bowl of roasted peanuts between them. I like it here, Nayla said. Me too, Amira whispered. The TV was off. No music played. Just forks against ceramic and the clinking of glasses filled with juice. There were no guards outside, no whispered schedules, no flowers ordered without asking. There was just space, and love that didn't ask for sacrifice to prove itself. Later, while Nayla was brushing her teeth, Amira stood at the window, watching dusk settle over the city. She thought of the mansion, of the fireplace, of the rooftop kiss. It wasn't a dream she regretted. It was a chapter she'd closed, fully, finally, without bitterness. Sometimes people say they love you when what they really mean is they love having you nearby. But love is not the same as control. She knew that now. In the quiet of her own kitchen, holding her daughter's favorite wooden spoon, she felt something she hadn't in months. Peace. Not bought, not gifted, not promised, chosen. Amira never raised her voice. She never slammed a door. She didn't post a long thread online. She just walked away. And in that quiet exit, she said everything. She showed us that freedom isn't loud, but it's powerful. She showed us that comfort isn't peace if it costs your name. And she reminded every single one of us, you can love someone and still need space. You can be given everything and still feel trapped. You can smile in a mansion and still feel like you're disappearing. But strength? It looks like a woman holding her child's hand in a small kitchen, smiling, cooking, breathing like the world finally fits. So now I want to hear from you. Which part of Amira's story felt personal? Which lesson hit you the hardest? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all. And if you want more stories that speak to your gut, that hold power, truth, and heart in the same breath, hit that subscribe button right now. This is just the beginning. Welcome to Mr. Ross Story Trail.